You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian, here with my co-host, Matt, coming to you on April 5th of 2022. Got a jam-packed episode today. Got a lot of youngsters that are making opening day rosters. We got a new sign stealing technology that is being implemented in the game, some injuries, some trades, and then we're going to give you a full rundown of our awards predictions, our division predictions, wild card, and our World Series, all of those predictions. But before we get to all of that, how are you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. Excited for opening day in a couple days, and just been I've actually been watching a little bit of spring training. Uh, last couple weeks, and just ready for the baseball season to start. And let's go ahead and get into it. We got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we do. So let's just go ahead and start with it's going to be a little weird because we're getting a lot more of the youth movement out of spring training into opening day. You know, we've seen a lot of the service time manipulation now the past, 5 to 6, 10 years. But now it seems like with everything going through the CBA that, teams are really willing to let those youngsters that they, even though they might not be ready to compete, to get up there to the roster. So just the big name prospects so far that have been confirmed to have made opening day rosters, we're looking at number 1 overall prospect from MLB Pipeline, Bobby Witt, Julio Rodriguez, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, Matt Brash, Hunter Green, Bryson Stott, and Joey Bart.
Yeah, so obviously, you look at three of those guys, Torkelson, Rodriguez, and Witt, as guys who are really, but depending on the service, they're all top 5 prospects. And I think Rodriguez, Witt, and to go along with Adley Rutschman, who didn't make the big league roster mainly because of an injury he has. The three of those guys, kind of some people call them number 1, number 2, number 3. It's kind of not necessarily in any order with them. So, and Torkelson's probably the most sure thing prospect out there too. So it's pretty crazy that those three guys made it. And you look at Hunter Green, is a guy with a tremendous upside. He's a former superstar high school prospect, draft prospect, who took a little bit of time because of injury, but he's ready to go now in the big leagues. And I'm excited to see what these guys can do. It'll be a lot of fun. A couple of those other guys too, like Joey Bart. I remember loving him in college and in the draft process, and I'm excited to see what he can do at the big league level with a full workload, although he's been there a little bit over the past couple of years. Bryson Stott will play a pretty big role for a supposedly contending team in the Phillies. And then, you look at Brash is another guy who, could really come up and have a big time season for a team that hopes to be contending. So, some of these guys are going to make big contributions for contending teams. Some of them are just exciting players. So we'll see what happens there. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, and to mention with Riley Green, it was basically announced that he was going to make the opening day roster, and then he got a foot injury, and I don't think he'll actually now be able to start on opening day roster. But they had basically confirmed beforehand that him and Torkelson were both supposed to make the roster. But yeah, I really like Witt. I think he's going to probably be the rookie of the year. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but if you look at Hunter Green, he's one of the guys that he has the, touches 102 on his fastball. And, it's going to be interesting to see how he is with the, in the Reds ballpark and with them tearing it all down. So some interesting things with the rookie prospects. And, we have guys like Adley Rutschman that will, probably come up later in the year. You have George Kirby is probably another guy who will be up later on. And some other, higher rated prospects like O'Neal Cruz is even a guy who, didn't make it that a lot of people thought should made it right out of spring training. So, it definitely seems like we're getting that next step forward of all the younger guys being able to be coming into the majors and, start making their impact on the game. But another thing that we wanted to jump to, and it was actually announced today, and they've been using it through spring training some, but it was officially announced that MLB will allow a new anti-sign stealing technology that they've come up with called PitchCom. So basically, the catcher will use like an armband like he normally had, but instead of like looking at it, calling the pitches, and putting his signs down, he can now. It's basically like a keyboard. He can punch pitch, pitch location, and all of that through a thing. And the pitchers are wearing a listening device, and they get that pitch call directly to them. So there will be no more basic. The catcher dropping the fingers down and having their fingers painted so catchers can see it. And then also, along with the pitcher and catcher, it will be three other teammates that will be on the field to help with fielding, positioning wise, based on pitch call.
Yeah, that it's kind of a weird thing. I don't think you're gonna be able to tell all that much difference watching games. I don't love it from a purity of trying to eliminate having all this technology on the field standpoint, but at the same time, I mean, it's something to help, uh, help eliminate some of the cheating type stuff, which I don't really think stealing signs is cheating. I think using outside technology to steal signs, like what the Astros did, that's cheating. But I don't know. It seems like it's something that I don't think it's really going to end up making all that big of a difference unless a team is being stupid by putting down the bad signs. So
Yeah, and the thing is, all teams will have access to it, but as of right now, it only looks like about half the league will actually be using it. Um, I know, like the Dodgers catchers have been wearing the band to get used to it. The pitchers have been wearing the devices, but they've still been using the old fashioned catcher using the sign. So, not all teams are going to embrace it, but it is something that probably going into the future you'll see a lot more of. But
yeah, for sure.
let's jump over to some of the injury news that we had happen this week. And the first one's a pretty big one, and that's with Jacob DeGrom being out until at least June 1st.
Yeah, Jacob Degrom. I mean, I hate seeing this, even as somebody who's pulling for a rival team of the Mets. It's really rough to watch him deal with these injuries he's dealt with it, last season and then to start this season. It sounds like a shoulder, some kind of stress injury in his shoulder, which I mean that doesn't sound good. Even they said that the earliest date he could come back is June, and they're hopeful that he'll be ready by then, but even if that's the case, like that doesn't sound good at all to have some kind of like stress injury in your throwing shoulder as a pitcher who's had some injury issues the past couple of years and puts the amount of stress on his body as he does with his pitching. With late the late career, or I wouldn't say late career, but the late bloomer type. Um, Breakout he had where he just started throwing harder and harder and harder and getting better and better. It feels like he's put a lot of stress on his joints that he didn't put on him when he was younger. And I hate to say that this really worries me about his future. It's almost like an elbow injury would, but we'll see. Hopefully, it's nothing that will set him back long term, and hopefully he's able to come back in June and be successful. Because I think I speak for everybody as someone who I love watching Jacob DeGrom pitch when he's healthy, and it's bad for the game when he's not there.
Yeah, he's the you always have those once in a generation type pitchers. Like you had Kershaw and Scherzer for a long time that were just like basically unhittable, and then we had Kluber for a couple years, and then now Degrom's basically been that guy, and a guy who you see consistently makes a fastball get faster. Like his velocity grows every year. He's throwing sliders that move like 8 to 12 inches, and he's throwing them at like 93 miles an hour, which is just insane. Um, and he's an all around athlete. Like even when he used to be able to hit, like he was a damn good hitter too, for a pitcher at least. So it really sucks seeing DeGrom go down. I hope he comes back because, like you said, he's one of the funnest pitchers to watch. And everyone basically tunes in when you have a DeGrom game because he's virtually unhittable every single time. But a couple other new pieces of news on the injury front. The White Sox lost Lance Lynn to a knee injury this week. He will be reevaluated in 4 weeks, and then he'll have to ramp up from there potentially. And then Chris Sale has a rib fracture that he has also been placed on a 60-day IL and looks like he'll be out until probably June as well.
Yeah, I mean that hurts. That hurts the White Sox, but I think they're going to be okay because as long as Lance Lynn's injury isn't something that keeps him out, for more like half or more than half the season, um, if he can be back, that's not the end of the world. They've got pretty good rotation depth already. With Giolito being out there, along with Dylan Cease, who I think is really good, and maybe a couple of those other guys like Kopech or somebody can step into that rotation role. But their offense will be able to carry them too, and their bullpen is amazing. So I think the White Sox will be okay. Sale on the 60-day IL. It really hurts that Sale wasn't able to be healthy, but we kind of knew this was coming for a couple weeks. It sucks that he's not healthy because this isn't like the elbow injury he had. He's back from that. And, part of the Red Sox hope was that they have, kind of a similar team to what they had last year. Plus, they add Chris Sale at full strength back and are able to make a run. And, that division's so competitive that missing Chris Sale for 60 days at least, even if Chris Sale is not the same guy as he was before the injury, before the Tommy John a couple years ago, I mean, still, that division's so competitive. That could be the difference between being a playoff team and not. So that really hurts. But we'll see. Hopefully, hopefully they're both able to come back healthy when when the time comes. And these guys are so talented. You hate seeing them be out, especially to start the season.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think, with Lance Lynn, he should be back, you know, rare or relatively soon, um, compared to the other two guys. And Sale, he's just been a guy who he's been so good, but just battling those injuries the past couple years, and it really sucks to see because I think people forget how good Chris Sale can really be. When he's at the top of his game. So hopefully they all come back, in June at the latest, and that we can see all of them back on the mound. But let's go ahead and jump over to the trade front. We'll start with our first trade that we had, which was the Los Angeles Dodgers trading AJ Pollock to the Chicago White Sox for relief pitcher Craig Kimbrell.
Well, this is a very weird and interesting trade. For one thing, it's a 1-to-1 trade. So it's just Pollock for Kimbrel, no prospects involved. There wasn't even cash involved. They're just swapping contracts. You look at AJ Pollock. It's very interesting. He's been playing pretty good. Last year, he put up 3 wins above replacement, 297 average, 355 on base, 536 slugging. And the White Sox need another outfielder. They could, we weren't really sure. We know Luis Robert is going to be out there every day. He's one of the best in the game. But in the corners, we weren't really sure. There'd been talk about like Andrew Vaughn playing a corner or Eloy Jimenez playing a corner. And those guys are more suited for like a first base DH type role. I know one of them will probably still have to play the corner. But bringing in Pollock, who isn't the best defensive outfielder anymore, but he's still okay, is a very good move in my opinion. And I mean, he's a guy that he could put up a really a couple good seasons for them, being in a full time role. Whereas in LA, he only played 117 games. I know he had a little bit of injury, but he wasn't really a full time. Like he had a lot of times he was a platoon split. They'd play Bellinger or somebody against right-handed pitchers, and have Pollock play every time against lefties. But um, definitely an interesting move. And then Craig Kimbrell's a guy who I don't especially like this trade for the for the Dodgers, because Craig Kimbrell he is a free agent at the end of the year, but after a really good start last year, he kind of struggled down the stretch, and with the White Sox. And I think he just seems like a guy that he had a little bit of a renaissance in the first half last year because of the change in pitch mix, but he just doesn't seem like the same guy as he used to be. And the one thing that worries me about him is that his control still looks awful. Like if you watch him, like he throws the ball all over the place. And his walk rate wasn't bad last year. It was actually pretty good, but he just seems like he's not locating his pitches very well, and that kind of part of that pitch mix change really helped him. So, he might end up being the same guy as he was. The first half last year, he was untouchable. I mean, he was the best reliever in baseball probably, and then the second half he was, after the trade to the White Sox across town, he was pretty mediocre at best. So, we'll see what happens with Craig Kimbrell. I think it'll be interesting to watch and see how he fits in. I'm assuming he'll be the closer at the beginning of the year for Los Angeles, but 34-year-old relievers can be pretty volatile, and you're kind of trading an everyday regular that a pretty good outfielder for him. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out.
Yeah, so Pollock is a really good player, especially when he's healthy. That's the main thing though, is can he stay healthy? If you've looked in his career, the most games he's played since 2016 is 117. That was just this year. Under that, he had 112 and 113 in 2017, 2018. And then in 2019, his first season, he played 86. So he played most of the season in 2020, 55 games, with the 60-game season. But, can he stay healthy? That's going to be something that you're going to have to, keep track of with him. And I think at least from the Dodgers side, it allows basically Chris Taylor to play more of an everyday role. That allows Gavin Lux to get more at bats now that you have Freeman on first, and basically Muncie's going to be playing second most of the time. And then you needed a closer because you lost, Kenley Jansen in free agency. And for Kimbrel, at least on his side, he had said that he wasn't as comfortable in the eighth inning. He was basically, comfortable in the ninth with the closer role. So we'll see if, how much that really mattered when he went over to the White Sox and all that. The pitch mix, like you said, he did change it, and that allowed him a little bit of renaissance. If there's a team though that usually can help a bullpen arm like exceed what they've been doing, it's usually the Dodgers. Like they found a way with Brandon Morrow when he, had, he basically fell out as a starter. He's came back. He was one of the most dominant people in that bullpen. They brought a guy like Joe Blanton, and they did it. He was a really good reliever for them as well. They brought Corey Knebel back, who had showed flashes, but he'd been dealing with some stuff. He was really good last year. So if there's a team that could help a pitcher, take that step forward or go back to their old self, I believe it would be LA. And allowing Kimbrel to get back in the ninth, it kind of makes sense. And then it's a 1-year deal. So if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out, and you're off the contract, where Pollock had a player option for next year. That helps the White Sox have that corner depth in the outfield moving forward. Like you said, with the unknowing of, guys like Andrew Vaughn and what they can do, and Eloy and the rest of their outfield situation right now. So, it's a win-win for both sides. I think both sides get what they need: outfield depth for the White Sox, a closer that you can potentially turn back to his former self at the Dodgers, and go from there. So, but let's go ahead and move on to the next trade, and that was with the San Diego Padres acquiring Sean Manaea and prospect Aaron Holiday from the Oakland Athletics for Adrian Martinez and Aribel Angeles.
Yeah, so I think this was a pretty fair trade. You get 1 year of Sean Manaea, who I think people overrate him a little bit. He was good last year, but for his career, he's a solid mid rotation arm. Like he's probably more of a number three. Career 3.86 ERA, 3.96 FIP. Last year, a 3.91 ERA and 179 innings for Oakland. Pretty solid there. His strikeouts and walk numbers were really good, but gave up a few too many home runs and a lot of contact. He's a pretty good pitcher. He's a good mid rotation guy. He's not gonna come out and just dominate. He's never thrown 180 innings or more. But he's a solid mid rotation guy. He's gonna get you a pretty good amount of innings. He's gonna throw, he'll probably throw in the 180 range this year. So he's solid, and of course he's also a rental, so you do get a little bit of value back for that. And then, a lot of people are a little underwhelmed about the prospect package that went back for him, and I mean, the Padres Oakland got they got a couple guys. They got the Angeles, I guess is how you say his name. He comes back as a guy who he's not the highest rated prospect right now, but he's also a 19-year-old that played an high A last year, so and put up good numbers. I mean, you're looking at a guy who maybe has a lot more upside than his prospect ranking. He's a high upside guy. I mean, and then you look at a pitcher who was fairly close to the big leagues. So, I think it's something where you're looking at a fairly even trade here.
Yeah, the it helps with the Padres pitching depth. Like, they were looking at guys like Mackenzie Gore, Nick Martinez. They've had to move to Nelson Lamet to the bullpen full time. It helps them basically stabilize that rotation. I think Clevenger is going to be out from the jump for a little while as well. So
Yeah.
you give Darvish, Musgrove, Snell, now Mania, and then you can kind of fill that fifth spot instead of having to fill 4 and 5 for a while. So not a bad deal. And then if it works out, maybe you can convince Mania to stay long term. You really didn't give up much your prospect wise for right now.
Yeah.
But let's jump over to the last trade that we have in this video, and that's with Austin Meadows getting traded from Tampa to Detroit for Isaac Paredes and a competitive balance draft pick.
Yeah, so this one was interesting too. I think a lot of this has to do with what the Rays value, and Austin Meadows is a really really poor defensive player. He's a corner outfield DH type guy. Last year in the playoffs, they had to throw him out there as a as a left fielder because they had Nelson Cruz to DH, and I think through a lot of people it didn't really make all that much sense. But this is a guy who has trended down the last couple of years. He's still a decent hitter, but a 113 WRC plus last year, that's not going to make up for the fact that you're a DH. And he's just not like he had a great 2019, but he's battled some injuries in the past, and I just don't know how good he is. And Isaac Paredes is a guy who puts up really, really, really good plate discipline numbers, and has in the minor leagues and in his short stints in the big leagues, he's put up really good plate discipline numbers. Now, the results haven't quite come yet in the big leagues, but he's a guy who could really I like what I see with him putting up sub 15% strikeout rates in the minor leagues, and then last year in the big leagues in 85 plate appearances put up a sub 13% while also walking 12% of the time. That's some good numbers right there. Even though his overall statistics as a hitter don't really reflect that quite as much, but he does have the raw power of he has all the raw power that you would need. But I think a lot of it's just the Rays are a stats organization, and if you look at a lot of guys who have put up good stats in the minor leagues, Isaac Paredes is a guy to look at. And they're looking more at statistical numbers than they are at the kind of the eye test type stuff. So and they see Paredes as a guy who could really be everything that that Austin Meadows was hoping to be, um, or that Austin Meadows has been, and then you get him for a couple more years of control, you get him a little bit cheaper, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Rays are usually pretty good about not screwing up trades, so
Yeah, it's hard to doubt the Rays from what they acquire during trades. They prove you wrong basically every single time. Um, I felt the Meadows trade coming. Maybe if it wasn't in this offseason, probably at the deadline. It was just trending that way for a long time. I think the only thing that it makes me scratch my head, which I just said you don't do that with the Rays, but I'm doing it, is the fit that Isaac Paredes has with them right now. Like, he has one more option year left, but you already have a ton of infielders. Like, you have Taylor Walls, you have Brujan, you have Brandon Lau, you have Wander Franco, and that's not to mention some of their other prospects that they have coming up. From at least from the outfield side, it clears a way for Josh Lowe to come in and play, a lot of the time. So that makes sense. It's just I don't know where Paredes fits with them right now and going forward to the future, because it seems like they have a lot of their long-term guys already kind of there on the second short third base side. um,
but
so that will
yeah, I
be
mean,
interesting. I mean, maybe he can transition to first base because
yeah,
that's something that
that's what
they
I was
are
gonna.
lacking, but even then, like, I don't I don't know. It's just something that the Rays will have to do their magic and make me look stupid in a year and a half.
That's what I was going to say. Isaac Paredes is more of a first base, third base type guy. He's not going to play up the middle. He's just not nowhere near athletic enough, and that he could probably be a better platoon option with G-Man Choi than Harold Ramirez or whoever they could throw out there at third. If Yandy Diaz is that platoon option. So that they could definitely put. They have a lot of depth up the middle, but they definitely could put him on a corner, and maybe even in the corner outfield. I don't know. I know that I think in the past he might have played some outfield in the minor leagues, so that might be another option for him is to put him in the outfield. But definitely interesting too. They signed Margot to a 2-year extension today, or yesterday maybe. I thought that was interesting because the Meadows trade, but um, Margot's definitely a better outfield defensive outfielder than Meadows, so I guess that has something to do with it. But
Yeah, so basically it'd be like Meadows, Kiermaier, and Lowe in the outfield going forward for them, at
yeah,
least until maybe they decide to trade Kiermaier, which has been rumored for a couple years now. So we'll see going forward. Like I said, it'll be a trade that I scratch my head out in a year. The Rays will make me look
yeah,
stupid. So
yeah.
well, let's jump over to our prediction segment. Let's go through and we'll kind of go through each division, run through it, and then give just a couple minute thoughts on that division and then what you have going forward. So we'll go ahead and start with the NL East.
Yeah, so the NL East is going to be interesting this year. The top four teams spent pretty heavily. The Braves went out and they lose Freddie Freeman, but they went out and had a big offseason with a lot of pickups. They replaced him with Matt Olson, signed him to a big extension. They went heavy on bullpen, brought in a lot of guys. I think the Braves will be good. The Mets, obviously they went out and got Scherzer, which was big. They got a couple of other guys, Mark Canha, Eduardo Escobar, to help fill out their lineup, along with Starling Marte, who the Mets haven't really had a great center fielder in a while. So that'll be a couple big pickups for them. The Phillies made a couple big pickups, and they returned most of what they had last year around them. And even the Marlins went out and spent, got Jorge Soler, got Avisail Garcia. They made some moves. So the Nationals, of course, are really at a talent deficit. And even though they did sign Nelson Cruz, I don't think they're going to really improve that much. But when I look at this, I think the Braves probably are the best team in this division right now. It would have been a much bigger debate for me with the Braves or the Mets until the DeGrom injury. But I think that this is one of those real competitive divisions where an injury to your best player like that could change who wins the division. So, I like the Braves rotation, Max Fried, Charlie Morton at the top. I'm a little bit concerned about the depth in the rotation. Ian Anderson can be a little inconsistent, and I think that could go one way or another. The Braves do have a lot of depth of, high minors, former prospects that are real, like, and they still have a lot of potential that they could maybe pull a couple guys out of that do well. But the bullpen and lineup for the Braves is really, really good. The Mets are going to have a good lineup. Their rotation depth is really starting to look rough, though. Chris Bassett's going to be there. Scherzer's going to probably be there, at the start of the year. But, Scherzer is also dealing with some nagging stuff already, injury-wise. And DeGrom being out, you're kind of looking at, like, I think Tyler McGill might be their opening day starter. So that's going to be tough for the Mets, who, I think they're a little step behind in the lineup and the bullpen for the Braves. The Phillies might have the most interesting roster because they've got two of the best pitchers and they've got one of the best lineups, but their defense is absolutely just abysmal. I mean, they might be one of those teams that their defense could be historically bad this year to go along with a lineup that could be really, really, really good. So that'll be interesting. I mean, watching Schwarber, Castellanos, Hoskins, Bohm, all these guys play every day is scary. Um, and then, the Marlins have all those pitchers. I wouldn't be shocked if the Marlins outperformed what a lot of people think they'll do this year. And then the Nationals, I mean, it's Juan Soto, and then, I mean, Nelson Cruz is still interesting to watch, but, I mean, the Nationals are bad, so.
Yeah, so looking at my NL East predictions, I have the Braves winning as well. They really didn't get worse in any other position. If you wanted to make the argument of they downgraded at first base barely between Olson and Freeman, then you can have it. But I think those are two similar players. That will be just fine. They won the World Series last year without Acuna, and he's going to be back early on this year. Um, you still have, your bullpen got even stronger, which was a damn good strength for you last year, and you just upgraded it this year. The depth is there. Like the back of that rotation, sure has some question marks, but overall the team is better anyways, and I think that's just going to help lift it up. Like if you're struggling in your 4 to 5 spot, like you can always make a trade at the deadline. We saw they were very good at the trade deadline last year, to fill those spots that they needed. So I have the Braves winning. Like you said, the Mets, it was going to be a really big debate for me. It wasn't going to be the Mets or the Braves to win had the DeGrom injury and the Scherzer stuff not already been happening. Like if they came in with a fully healthy DeGrom and Scherzer, then I might have put the Mets to beat the Braves barely, but once that happened, I think they're squarely a number 2 team in this division. I actually have the Marlins number 3 this year. Part of that is because of how bad I think the Phillies defense is just going to be. Like, I just don't like it, but also because the Marlins, they have that pitching staff, like Sandy, Pablo Lopez, like Trevor Rogers. You're going to have, Eliza Hernandez is going to be there. You're probably going to get some of your other, younger guys to come up this year as well. Then you went and got a Jorge Soler. You went and got an Avisail Garcia. You're going to have another year of letting Jazz Chisholm take his step forward. You're probably going to get JJ Bleday up sometime this year. You upgraded defensively at catcher with Jacob Stallings. That's going to help a big time as well. Like overall, I like the Marlins the way that they're made up. I could see the Phillies still being that 3rd team just because of the offensive firepower and the top 2 in that rotation. But I just don't trust it as much, and I really do think this Marlins team is sneaky good, and maybe this is me kind of overthinking them a little bit, like I did with a couple teams last year. But I really like the Marlins at 3rd, Phillies 4th. We've talked a lot about it. Their defense, I just think, is going to be so bad. I don't know how much the offense and pitching is going to be able to overcome that. Then the Nationals in 5th. They're going into the rebuild, so they're not going to be competitive at all here. But let's go ahead and jump over to the NL Central.
Yeah, so I have the Brewers winning the NL Central again. The NL Central is probably the weakest division in baseball this year. All these teams have massive flaws. I think the Brewers, though, they're 3-headed monster at the top of their rotation. The defending Cy Young winner, Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta, all 3 of those guys are really, really good. They also have a couple other guys who uh, are on their way up that could end up being solid pieces. Like Adrian Hauser is a guy who's a former top prospect that has pitched in the big leagues some now, and the Brewers seem to be a team that can make those guys, after a year or two of kind of getting their feet wet, take a big step, kind of like they did with Woodruff and Burns. So you never know what might happen with him, or maybe even like an Aaron Ashby who's new to the big leagues, and the Brewers have that too. That massive back end of the bullpen with Hader and Devin Williams. Those 2 guys are really, really good. They usually are able to find a couple depth pieces to go around them, and I don't think that'll be a huge problem. Really where I'm concerned with the Brewers is in the lineup, because I don't think Christian Yelich is going to ever be the same guy as he used to be. I don't think he's a horrible hitter or a bad player or anything, but he's just not that superstar MVP caliber player he used to be. And they really need him to be that to carry this offense, because outside of, Christian Yelich has that star power, and Willie Adames had that breakout last year, which is really nice. But outside of those guys, you're relying on some veteran players like like Lorenzo Cain to maybe have a bounce back year, a late career, good season. You've got a bunch of young guys who weren't super high rated prospects like Urias or veterans like maybe Colton Wong or somebody, that Hunter Renfroe. It's not a great situation offensively for the Brewers, and that's why. I think that it doesn't matter all that much what the teams are going to be facing in this division. Number 2, I've got the Cardinals. I don't really like their rotation. I'm a little worried about the depth of their bullpen. I think their lineup's going to hit pretty well, and they're a great defensive team. Nolan Arenado at 3rd. You're going to have Bader out center, so good defensively. Um, Goldschmidt's one of the better defensive first basemen. Yadier Molina's not what he used to be defensively, but he's still a pretty good guy back behind the plate. And then I think that they do a good job of having their pitching staff, while they're not super talented, pitch to that defense and kind of match it up well. So, and we might also see a little bit of a kind of a momentum, like veteran presence in this, kind of like we've seen from maybe like the Giants last year, where you've got like the three big former Cardinal superstars during their World Series runs, kind of all together for their last season. Molina, Wainwright, and Albert Pujols all playing together in their probably all three of their last seasons. So it'll be interesting to see. Third place have the Reds. They really don't make a lot of sense to me. They've been trading pieces away. But I still like a couple of their arms, and their lineup still got some good pieces to it. I mean, Joey Votto was so good last year. I think he'll continue to be good. They have Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson. The breakout rookies last year did well. I think that they're definitely a step behind the top two. The Cubs, their pitching staff is just completely atrocious outside of Marcus Stroman, and their lineup is atrocious outside of they might hit a little bit, but I don't. There's so many question marks there. I really don't think the Cubs are good at all, and then the Pirates are just the Pirates. I mean, they're gonna be bad again. So, we'll see what happens here. I think it's the Brewers, Cardinals, Reds, Cubs, Pirates in that order in the NL Central.
Yeah, so I believe Milwaukee will win this division again. You mentioned the pitching staff to that bullpen. It's too good. Their offense, with the Willie Adames breaking out, Yelich will probably take a step forward, just not back to the MVP Yelich type stuff. Luis Urias wasn't awful last year. I think he maybe takes a little step forward. I'm going to be really interesting to see what Keston Hiura can do. He's been lighting it up during spring training. So I want to see what he can do in a full season that way. But the question marks about their offense is definitely there. The Cardinals, they're going to be a good team. They always are. Good defensively, like you mentioned. They're going to pitch to contact a lot. Their rotation and bullpen are really big question marks, which is why I don't think they'll be that much of a competitor in the division. I just don't trust that overall, but it will get away with it in the NL Central. The 3-4 spot, I have the Cubs third. I do think that they're a little bit better than the Reds, who are selling everyone off, and I think a lot of this is because I could see when they get to the deadline, the Reds trading more guys. Like, I could see them trading a Luis Castillo at the deadline. I could see them maybe trading to Tyler Mahle at the deadline. And just getting some other pieces back. Well, the Cubs, I believe they do have some younger guys that are good. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what Nick Madrigal can do. I really believe in Seiya Suzuki to help that. Like, Frank Schwindel and Patrick Wisdom were not bad last year when given a little bit of a run. It is going to be rough having to watch Jason Hayward all the time still, but I do think that the offense is there enough. You'll get Wade Miley back at some point, who was really good last year. I believe Hendricks will probably take a step back to the direction that he was, maybe not back to that level, but I don't think he'll be a 4.3 something ERA that he had last year or whatever. I mentioned the Reds. I just think they're going to fire sale more at the deadline. That's going to help push them back even more. And then you mentioned the Pirates. Like, they need to. They're taking those little steps forward. If you get O'Neal Cruz up there, you have Brian Hayes. If you sign Brian Reynolds long term, like, you have some pieces there that you need to keep building with. And you have a couple interesting younger starters, but you just got to keep building that way, and they're just not there yet.
Yeah, I will say I don't think the Pirates will have the worst record in the National League.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But we'll jump over to our NL West real quick. And I'll just run through mine real quick because it's pretty damn similar to yours. I got the Dodgers winning, the Giants second, the Padres third, Rockies fourth, Diamondbacks fifth. I just think Dodgers are too talented to lose again. The Giants, they've lost Buster Posey last year. They signed Rodon and lost Gossman. Can Rodon stay healthy? There's the question marks there. I would have the Padres second if I knew exactly when Tatis was going to come back. But the fear of him being out until June, maybe July, I just think it's a little bit too much for them to overcome at that moment. And then the Rockies will be over the Diamondbacks. They've made, they signed Bryant. They still have Herman Marquez, Senzatella, Freeland, and I just don't see the talent the Diamondbacks have there. So Diamondbacks fifth in mine.
Yeah, I actually had the same order here. The Dodgers, they just probably got better. I don't know. I mean, they're probably about the same because they did lose Seager, but they brought in Freddie Freeman, so they're real similar to last year. I am a tiny bit worried about their rotation depth because they lost Scherzer, and they're going to have some injuries at the start of the year, like Dustin May being out, and some of their guys haven't been the most reliable recently, like Kershaw's dealt with some injury type stuff. But I mean, they're still really good in the rotation. Um, Giants number two. I really like the Giants starting pitching. I think that Logan Webb is a legitimate, guy that wasn't just a fluke season last year. I like Rodon if he could stay healthy to be I think Rodon, if he stayed healthy, I would have picked him for Cy Young if I thought he was going to stay healthy. But I think he might end up being a guy that just doesn't get you that many innings. But the Giants do a good job managing their pitchers. They brought in a couple other guys. I actually think watch out for Alex Cobb too. He was throwing 97 in the spring, and he's never thrown higher than like 92. So that might be an interesting guy to look at for the Giants as well. But their lineup, I mean, I don't think you're going to get the same contribution from Brandon Crawford that you did last year. Obviously, the catcher situation is not going to be as good as it was last year with Posey having his renaissance. But, you still got some really good pieces. Yastrzemski will probably be better than he was last year. He had a down year. Um, and they got some upside pieces too, like Joey Bart maybe has a big year or something. So they'll figure it out. They signed Jock Peterson. He'll be a nice platoon piece in the outfield. It's probably an upgrade. And they do such a good job mixing and matching that they'll do pretty well. Padres number three. I don't love the Padres rotation or bullpen. I know their rotation's got some big names in it, but I'm a little bit nervous on Blake Snell, as he walked a lot of guys last year, and his command's always been a little bit spotty. Darvish is aging. He really struggled after the sticky stuff ban. I do like Musgrove a lot. I think he'll do well, but Mania, like I said earlier, I don't really believe in him as like a top of the rotation. I just think they're more middling in the rotation than people expect. I do like their lineup even without Tatis, but obviously Tatis missing is a huge deal, and their bullpen really didn't have a lot of big names in it. So I do worry a little bit about the Padres. So I have them third. Rockies fourth. They're better than you think, but they're still not good. Um, you know, I think they've got some pieces, but they might actually rival the Phillies for defense being awful. And their starting pitching is better than it usually is, but they're not great, and their bullpen is terrible. So Rockies worry me a little bit on that. I think they're fourth. Fifth, I think, is a distant fifth, is the D-backs. Their pitching rotation's bad. Their bullpen is really bad. And their lineup's got some pretty good young guys in it, but outside of like Tel Marte, who we don't know if he stays healthy, um, there's just not a lot there. So it'll be interesting to see what maybe some of their guys do. I like some of their young guys. Dalton Varsho is a guy that I like. They got Rojas. I like him. Carson Kelly is somebody that's interesting to see what he does this year. So the D-backs have some interesting pieces to watch. They're just not going to be good. But yeah, Dodgers, Giants, Padres, Rockies, D-backs.
Yeah, and then we had the same three exact wild card teams with the Mets, the Giants, and the Padres being our wild card teams. But let's jump over to the AL, and we'll start with the AL East.
Yeah, so starting in the AL East, my pick in the AL East is the Blue Jays. They lost Marcus Semien, but I think they got better in a lot of other facets, especially starting pitching. I wasn't a huge believer in Robbie Ray repeating what he did last year, but they brought in Kevin Gossman, which was nice. They're going to have a full season of Jose Barrios. They got Hyun-Jin Ryu. Alec Manoah showed some promise last year. And then you got some other pieces too, like maybe like a Kikuchi does well there. I don't know, but they've got Ross Stripling. They've got some depth pieces that one of them will probably have a decent season at number 5, or maybe even a prospect. Maybe Nate Pearson, when he gets healthy, figures it out this year. So they're in a good situation pitching wise. Their bullpen's a little bit shaky, but man, that offense, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's so good. And George Springer, hopefully they get him healthy for the full season. They were missing him a lot of last year. Um, this is a team that has a lot of really talented offensive pieces and a talented rotation. And I think those are two things that'll really propel a team to be at the top. And I do think it's close in this division, but I like the Blue Jays being the winner of the AL East. Number two, I've got the Yankees. People have been hating on the Yankees because they didn't have a stunningly amazing offseason, but they did some good things. I think if Josh Donaldson can be healthy, he'll be pretty good at third base, probably an upgrade over Urshela. Kiner Falefa is an upgrade over Andrew Velasquez, who was playing there last year. They can move Gleyber Torres to second, and you've got Rizzo coming back. That's nice. Aaron Judge, if he's able to continue what he did last year, was fantastic. Giancarlo Stanton's really good. They've got some good pieces. Their rotation's good. They get Severino back. We'll see what he is. But, you could see a scenario where you have Cole being the ace, Severino, if he can kind of regain his form pre-Tommy John, being a really good number two, and then Jordan Montgomery being a really good number three. Plus, you still might get something pretty good out of Jamison Taillon or some of the prospect type guys, and their bullpen is great. So I think the Yankees will be number two. Number three, I've got the Red Sox. I really like the Trevor Story signing. I'm a little worried about their starting pitching, especially without Sell for a while. The bullpen should be kind of like it was last year. But I love their lineup. I mean, Bogarts is one of the most underrated players in baseball. I don't think he gets talked about enough for how good he is. I mean, and then you got like superstars like Rafael Devers is incredible. So I really like the Red Sox. They could be number two for me. They could even be number one, but I think I'll keep them at number three for now. The Rays, I think, take a little bit of a step back. Maybe missing Tyler Glass now for the full season is going to hurt them. They really don't have the same pitching as they have the last few years in that rotation. I know that they're famous for mixing and matching pitching really well, but they've had a couple guys the last few years. They had Glasnow last year. Year before last, they had Snell and Charlie Morton to go along with Glasnow. So, like, they had a couple of those big time arms, and I really like Shane McClanahan, but I don't know. There's a lot of variation there, and I don't know if they will be able to rely on him as being that guy, their Charlie Morton or their Blake Snell that they've had. I think McClanahan could be good, but then they have a lot of prospect depth too. But I love Wander Franco, and the Rays I think are very, very, very close to the other three. Love Wander Franco. I think they're going to hit pretty well. Their bullpen's going to be really good again. And then fifth, I mean, how could you put anybody with the Orioles last? But I mean, their pitching is just out of this world atrocious. Maybe we see Grayson Rodriguez this year and to help that pitching a little bit. Their bullpen is awful. I am excited to see some of their offensive pieces. Adley Rutschman will be really cool to see him finally get the call. It seems like it's only been like a couple of years that he's been in, since he was drafted first overall, but it feels like he's been in the minor leagues forever because he's just such a hyped prospect as a catcher. But you also look at maybe it'll be interesting to watch Cedric Mullins, Trey Mancini. They got some pretty interesting offensive pieces, but we'll see what happens there. But the AL East right now, I've got the Blue Jays, Yankees, Red Sox, Rays, and Orioles.
Yeah, so I also have the Blue Jays winning this division. Like you said, you could basically put any of the top four in any position and you could be right. Like, I just believe the Blue Jays are, like you mentioned they lost Marcus Semien, but, I believe in Kevin Biggio. Like, I'm a big Kevin Biggio fan. Like, I believe he'll take a step forward. I really like the Matt Chapman move, getting him out of Oakland and into the AL East. I think he's going to improve a lot. You got the outfield. You have Teoscar. You traded Randall Grichuk for Tapia, so we'll see what that does. But overall, I really like it. The pitching rotation is so good too. You have Ryu, you have Barrios, you have Gossman. Now you're going to have Kikuchi, you have Stripling, like you have Pearson. You mentioned you have Manoah. The pitching just there, it's so good along with that offense. And their bullpen is pretty underrated as well. Like Julian Merriweather, Jordan Romano, like they have guys who are really good that people just don't know the names of. So I really think the Blue Jays are going to be that top team this year. The Yankees, I do have them at second as well. I believe they did improve, like getting Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez out, adding Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner Falefa in. Like that's going to help a lot. You're getting a full year of Joey Gallo. You're getting a full year of Anthony Rizzo. Like that team is going to be really good offensively. You have Garrett Cole, who is a Cy Young contender every single year. Luis Severino coming back, who was one of the top pitchers when he went down. He's going to come back. Hopefully, you get a lot out of him. Nestor Cortez is a guy who I think is going to really thrive as well. Probably be their number 4 this year. So I really like the Yankees. The bullpen's really good. In the third spot, I got the Rays actually. You mentioned that they don't have it, the Glass now, they don't have the Snell, they don't have the Morton, but they just find a way. Like I think I made the mistake last year and I put them fourth, and they won the most games in the in the majors last year. Like they just find a way to do it. I'm not doubting them this year as much. I just think the other two have a lot more talent, and I think they're going to live up to that hype. The Red Sox, I have them at fourth, and that is literally just because I don't trust their pitching staff. Like I don't. You're looking at right now the aces as Nate Eovaldi, which is that that's not terrible for an ace. It's not great, but it's not terrible. But then your number 2 starter right now is Nick Pivetta, and then you're going to throw Tanner Houck in there, who was in your bullpen last year, and then you have Michael Waka and Rich Hill to round it out, and you don't even have much behind them. Even like you might get Sale back in June, but you've signed Paxton, he's out. Like you were talking about Garrett Whitlock, who was one of your better bullpen arms last year, was in the fight for a number 5 rotation spot. Like I just don't trust their rotation or their bullpen at all. Like outside of Whitlock, and Barnes maybe. Like I don't trust the rest of the other guys to put up good seasons that will make them be competitive. And I think that's just going to be the downfall in this division, where the Blue Jays and Yankees have so good offense that it's going to eat that Red Sox pitching alive. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to score enough runs to keep up with it. And the Rays just do everything so well. You mentioned the Orioles in fourth. They're just, you're starting on that thing up. We're going to see Adley, probably going to see Grayson Rodriguez. You're probably going to see DL Hall this year, maybe probably out of the bullpen for him. You might even see Gunnar Henderson, maybe. But, they're just in the building phase. You're going to have Mullins. You're going to have Mancini. You're going to have Mountcastle. It'll be interesting to see if they do end up, entertaining trading Mancini, Mullins, or Means. It's been constant rumors about that. So it's going to be something you're going to have to face moving forward. But they're fifth in this division for me. But moving over to the AL Central, I got the White Sox winning this division. I think it's pretty easy that they're going to be the division winners here. The Twins in that second spot, even though I don't trust their pitching enough, signing Carlos Correa is huge. Having Byron Buxton, if you can have him for a full season, that's huge. I just think that they have the talent there offensively to help make up for it, at least from the starting pitching wise. They have a good bullpen that I think will help make up for it. I have the Tigers in third. I think with the Javi Baez trading for Austin Meadows, and some of the other moves, signing Eduardo Rodriguez, I think that's a really underrated signing. They're going to be really good this year. The Guardians, I have them in fourth. Their pitching is going to be good, but I don't see much else around, and I think they're going to trade Jose Ramirez maybe even before opening day because they're not working on an extension really, and he basically had wanted one. So there's been a lot of rumors that they might trade him before opening day even. And then the Royals in fifth. And I could even see the Royals maybe jumping up into that fourth spot. Like that's how much I believe in what Bobby Witt is going to do this year. But I just don't trust their pitching staff as it's currently constructed to be anything more than, one of the bottom 5 in the league.
Yeah, so I agree with the order here, but I think it's actually a lot closer. The White Sox, I definitely think are the number 1 team here, especially the addition of AJ Pollock. Losing Kimbrel does hurt because Kimbrel's a good pitcher, but their bullpen has so much depth. But
they did lose Crochet as well.
I was gonna say that they are starting to rack up the injuries a little bit because Crochet's out, and obviously we talked about Lance Lynn, but the one guy that I think for the White Sox, I think Dylan Cease is going to have a huge year for them.
Yes,
and I honestly considered putting him in my Cy Young prediction, but I decided not to just because I'm still a little bit worried about him walking too many guys. But he looked really good last year. He was one of the best pitchers in the American League, and nobody really talked about him. But I definitely like the White Sox.
I had him as one of the handful of guys that I thought about for Cy Young as well.
Yeah, he's. I think he's going to do well, but but the White Sox. I mean, their lineup's good. They've got everyone knows the pieces they have. Number two, the Twins. Like you said, Buxton. If he's healthy, he's looked great this spring. I do worry a little bit about his approach at the plate still, but as long as if it's as improved as it was last year, and he's able to continue that, he's going to be unstoppable, and this team will go along with it because Carlos Correa's looked great this spring. He had that, really that career year last year. Um, and they've got other pieces too. Polanco's good, and I honestly like them getting Gary Sanchez behind the plate because don't know if Gary Sanchez is ever going to be a good defensive catcher, but Gary Sanchez getting out of New York is going to help him. I think a lot of his issues were mental, and I don't think New York helped with that. And they've got other pieces too that maybe like Max Kepler, but I think Alex Kirilloff's another guy that could maybe take a step forward. He was a top prospect a couple years ago, and he's been starting to get a little seasoning, and we'll see what happens there. I don't trust their pitching. I agree with that, but you never know. They might be able to pick up somebody at the deadline. Maybe they have several guys who have some experience that maybe one of them will step into that number two role, and they can manage until they can find somebody to trade with. But number three, I have the Tigers. I did like Eduardo Rodriguez. I don't especially like the Javi Baez signing because I think he's a little bit overrated, but he's still a good player. What I do really like about the Tigers is the young guys they have coming up. I think that Torkelson's about as sure thing of a prospect as you can find. I'm kind of hated to see that Riley Green's not going to be starting the season there with that injury, but they also have a lot of young pitching: Matt Manning, Casey Mize, Tariq Skubal, who all have a lot of high upside. And I think at least one of them, will figure it out this year and turn into a really, really, really good guy to go along with Rodriguez. And this team was not as bad as you think they were last year too. But number four, I have the Guardians. I thought about putting them third, but that offense is really bad, especially in the outfield. And we don't know the Jose Ramirez situation. But assuming they keep Jose Ramirez, their pitching staff is not as good as it has been. Bieber, I don't think is as good as the guy we saw last year before the injury and in 2020. I think the sticky stuff ban's going to have an effect on him. And there are other guys that they're decent, but I don't think they're great. And we'll see what happens with the Guardians. And then the Royals, I mean, they could make an argument to be third through fifth. But their pitching staff, I think, doesn't have quite as much upside as the Tigers or Guardians does. Even though I think that their lineup is kind of similar, and I do think they have some upside. I just don't know if they have enough to surpass number three. But I mean, the Royals, you can see a situation where the Royals have a really, really good offense this year. Bobby Witt could come in and take the league by storm. Whit Merrifield's still there. He could have a little bit of a bounce back. Carlos Santana could have a little bit of a bounce back. You could have Salvador Perez hit like he did last year again. They've got some talented players there in the lineup. I do worry about their pitching being able to hold up, and I don't think it's got as high an upside as these others do. But yeah, I'm at AL Central: White Sox, Twins, Tigers, Guardians, Royals.
Yeah, so let's jump over to the American League West and go ahead and start with your American League West predictions.
Yeah, so in the West, I honestly had debated with myself because I think I do this every year too, but I am going to go with the Astros. I doubted them last year. I picked the Angels last year. Picking the Astros. I actually like their pitching a lot more than a lot of people do. I think Framber Valdez is very underrated. And I think that they've got some young guys. Urquidy and Garcia are good. Um, and I think their lineup is just incredible. I mean, Altuve had the bounce back last year, showed that he wasn't a fluke. Um, I think Alex Bregman's still a pretty good player. He dealt with some injury last year, but he's still a good player. But the biggest thing to me was the true breakout of Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez. Those guys are both extremely good. You get Michael Brantley's a really good calming force in that lineup. Yuli Gurriel was really good last year. But the one thing that concerns me with the Astros, and Verlander coming back is huge. One thing that does concern me with the Astros is that some of their guys are aging, and they had some pretty good seasons from those guys last year. And also, they lost their best player from last year in Carlos Correa. So the Astros are not as good as they were last year. I think they're still probably number one in this division, but I think it's going to be really close. I think this is going to be a battle down to the end with the second place team, the Angels, who I truly think that last year could have been a playoff team if it wasn't for injuries. Rendon being hurt, Trout being hurt, that killed them last year. Both of those guys. I mean, that's two like MVP caliber players being out for the year, basically. And they Shohei Ohtani breaking out the way he did, Walsh breaking out the way he did. I really, really, really like that lineup right now. And then you never know. Joe Adell's looked pretty good this spring. You got Joe Adell and Brendan Marsh, but are both high upside guys. You can maybe even add another good guy. The biggest thing for me with the Angels is they did improve their pitching. They went out and got Syndergaard. I think that Reed Detmers is going to be really good at the big league level. I like I like what they did in the bullpen. Adding Aaron Loop, I think was big. Adding bringing back Rizal Iglesias was big. Ryan Tepera is big. Like I really like what they did in their offseason. I think it's an underrated offseason. They're going to be good. The Mariners, I like what they did in the offseason as well, but I really think they overperformed big time last year. I think that they were not as good as their record, and that they took enough steps to where they're going to be better than they were last year. But I also think their record's going to be worse. I think the team's going to be better, but the record worse. So, but I do think they break 500 again. They'll be right around that 500 level mark, I think. The Rangers at number 4, they got way better. They're a lot closer than they were, but there's just still too many holes. That I don't trust their pitching. They have a non-existent bullpen right now, and their lineup is very top-heavy with Simeon and Seager. Behind those two guys, there really isn't all that much there. But in the fifth, the A's are going to be, I think, the worst team in baseball. I don't really think that they have many pieces that I would even. I think that they maybe have 2 pieces that would be, right now that would be attractive to start for another team. I mean, I think it's that bad for the A's. They're just, I mean, they do have Frankie Montas still, which probably won't last that much longer. And we'll see what happens with Sean Murphy if they even, and Ramon Laureano as well if he comes back off the suspension. But um, we'll see what happens there. But that's a bad situation. That's gonna be a while before we see the A's back up in the running again.
Yeah, so this is probably going to be the division that I get the most crap for, and that will look the worst at the end of the year. And that's because I'm doing it again. I drank the juice last year. I thought the Angels were going to win the division, and I think they're going to do it again. Um, I just, getting a healthy Trout, a healthy Rendon, along with Otani. You mentioned the breakout of Jarrett Walsh, like allowing Joe Adell and Brandon Marsh to play full time, getting rid of Justin Upton, so you're not forcing him into the lineup anymore. Um, you know, Taylor Ward has been really good for them the past couple years. Jose Rojas is a guy who kind of, he wasn't good last year, but he's really been really good during spring training. I like what he's done improvement wise, so I could see him taking a little step forward. I just think this team is too good offensively. And then, like you mentioned, like they got Noah Syndergaard. You've got Otani back for another year. Like he's probably going to improve on the pitching side now that he's done it for a full year. Um, Patrick Sandoval is another guy who I think can take a step forward. Like if you look at some of his underlying numbers and then some of his other peripherals, like he's a guy who is due for a pretty good step forward. Um, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do if Michael Lorenzen sticks in that rotation, because it kind of seems like that's what's going to happen, what he can do. But Reed Detmers is a guy who could be really good. They're going to get Griffin Canning back. Maybe he could take a step forward. And that bullpen has dramatically improved, bringing Iglesias back, getting Loop, getting Tepera, getting Archie Bradley, having a guy like Mike Mayers already down there. And being able to push some of these other guys, like if Lorenzen doesn't work out in the rotation, he could be a really solid reliever. We've seen it before. Jose Suarez, if he doesn't work out in the rotation, he can get pushed to the bullpen and be really good. I just think this team is so good, especially with what they have offensively. Like if you're pushing out an offense that has Otani, Trout, Walsh, Rendon, and then you have one of those guys, take a step forward, one of the younger kids, and then have David Fletcher on the back end to help kind of reset the lineup. Like, that is really good. Um, Looking at second in this division, I have the Mariners. I really like the Mariners team. I liked them last year. I was higher on them than most people were. They did overperform what they should have, but I think they've taken the steps forward this year to help improve that. Like, you're gonna have Julio Rodriguez all year. Kelenic is gonna be up soon. You're gonna get Kyle Lewis back. You traded for a guy like Jesse Winker, who's big time offensive, especially against righties for you. You have Ty France, who was really good last year. You brought in Adam Frazier, who's going to be a solid everyday guy for you. You have Abraham Toro, who you're really high on. I mean, you have a ton of pieces that maybe people don't like the name value of it, but I think they fit together really well. Even Eugenio Suarez is going to bring some of that power that you lost with Kyle Seager. They have a really good rotation. Signing Robbie Ray was huge. You're going to have Logan Gilbert, who he got his first taste of the majors last year. Wasn't awful. He was a 4 or 5, but I think he can take it a little step forward. Marco Gonzalez, he'll be solid. Chris Flexen will be your 5 guy. Matt Brash made the rotation as a number 5 starter. I really like what he can do. I think he's going to have a big year as a rookie this year, be even in contention for Rookie of the Year, even with guys like Bobby Witt, Spencer Torkelson, like Julio Rodriguez. Like, I really do like that. You're going to get George Kirby up, who's another guy I'm really high on. I just like the Mariners team overall. I feel like they're going to fit together really well, and they're going to make a push in this division. It is really close with the Astros, though. I have the Astros third. I just don't know if I trust them enough, like with their rotation right now. Like, sure, getting Verlander's back is going to be nice, but he's going to be a 39-year-old coming off of Tommy John. What are you really going to get from him? Losing Carlos Correa and not really replacing that is going to be big. Yuli Gurriel's getting up there. Is he going to be able to keep this up, or is he going to go to what he was the first couple years? Michael Brantley, he's been a guy who's notoriously not been able to stay healthy, and he's starting to age a little bit more. Like, he's getting up, I think he's 34, 35 now. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? And that bullpen isn't really that great. Like, you traded for Kendall Graveman last year, and now he's gone. Like, you had Yimi Garcia, he's gone. I just don't trust their pitching staff enough. Like, Urquidy and Framber Valdez, I really like them, but everyone else, like, you don't even have Lance McCullers right now. Like, he's out, and you don't even know when he's going to come back. So I just don't know if I trust them enough. They have a great top of the offensive, top of the lineup bats, but it's kind of the depth version and then that pitching that kind of scares me from the Astros side. And I think that the Angels and Mariners are just going to be slightly better than them. The Rangers, like you said, they improved a lot. You have Simeon, you have Seager, you got John Gray, you got Cole Calhoun. Like, you've started your rebuild, but you're not quite there to the other 3 levels yet. And then you mentioned the A's. They started the fire sale. We've talked a lot about it. There's probably more of that coming, if not before the season, but at the deadline. And they're just going to be down there forever. So I have the Angels winning, the Mariners second, Astros third, Rangers fourth, A's fifth. And then if we're looking at my wild card teams, I have the Yankees, I have Seattle, and then I have Houston. I know we talked about the AL East being so strong, but I think they're going to beat up on each other a lot. And I think that the Mariners and Astros will be able to win a lot of those games against the Rangers. The A's, they're going to win, be able to compete and win most of the games against the AL Central there. And I just think that the minimal games that they're going to have to play against the AL East, if they're able to split that, basically, they're going to be a lot better off, where the AL East is going to have 4 teams where they're really fighting each other day in and day out every time. So my 3 wildcard teams, the Yankees, Houston, and Seattle.
Yeah, my 3 wild card teams were the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Angels. I think it's going to look really similar to last year, where you have the AL East teams and one AL West team involved. And I think that with the extra team, I gave it to the Angels. So, but my World Series prediction overall, I think the Dodgers over the Blue Jays. I think the Dodgers are the best team overall, and the Blue Jays. I think that they're going to have the pieces it takes, and I think they'll do some good stuff at the deadline to bring in bullpen help that'll get them to the World Series. But I think it's going to be really tough to beat the Dodgers. So I think I got the Dodgers beating the Blue Jays in 6 games in the World Series.
And I also have the same matchup, but I have Toronto beating the Dodgers in 6 games. Um, I just think that the uncertainty of what you're going to get from the back end of the rotation, and with Kershaw potentially, I just think Toronto's too good there in that matchup, and that they're not going to be able to really overcome that with the top of the pitching staff that Toronto, is able to bring with the offensive firepower. Like, the Dodgers probably have the best lineup in baseball. They have, arguably a top, 5 1 2 1 2 3 punch in baseball. But I just think that the back half of that, depending on which Kershaw shows up, like if you get the Kershaw that he was the last couple years, then you can make that argument. But if you get the Kershaw who's consistently dealing with elbow injuries, and if the fastball velocity is not there and the slider's not biting, then that's going to be a big thing going forward. So I have the Blue Jays over the Dodgers in 6. But going over to our awards predictions, and we'll kind of fly through these a little bit because we've went a little long already. On the NL side, I have Rookie of the Year as Seiya Suzuki. I really like what he's going to bring. I've mentioned it a couple times on it through episodes that I really like his potential. I really like what he can be moving forward. I think he can be a 5-tool impact player. Cy Young, I'm going Sandy Alcantara. I really like what he did the second half of last year. And going forward, I think he's going to keep dominating. I think the Marlins have got better to where he can be more in contention now. I just really like that. And then from MVP, I think it's Juan Soto's kind of clear away at the moment. You can make the argument for Bryce Harper, but the other guys like Acuna not being able to play the field all the time from day one might hurt him. He could still be in consideration. I just don't know. Until we see it, I don't trust it. And then with Tatis being out for so long, I just think Juan Soto's the best hitter, and that he will, they don't really care much about the defensive impact nowadays. I think he'll win the NL MVP.
Yeah, mine is I think O'Neal Cruz comes up pretty early and wins Rookie of the Year. I'm not very high on Seiya Suzuki. I think that he's going to really struggle coming over from Japan, and at first at least, he's looked really 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 overmatched in the spring so far, outside of just a couple little moments. I think that my NL Cy Young, I went with Corbin Burns. I know it's boring, but on a rate basis, he was far and beyond better than everyone else last year except DeGrom, and DeGrom is obviously going to be out for a couple months at least. So, maybe Birds can work on his innings total a little bit, get a little bit better there at pitching deeper. I know he also missed a couple starts last year to COVID. Hopefully that doesn't happen this year. That's not really a durability issue as much as we're in a global pandemic last year issue. And then my MVP, I went with Soto. I think you hit the nail on the head. It would have been easy to pick Acuna if he was going to be there the whole year. It would have been easy to pick Tatis if he was going to be there the whole year. Both of those guys would have run away with it last year if they were healthy all year. Harper, I know won it last year, but I think Soto's just a better version of Harper on a worse team, but not that much worse of a team. So I think Soto's probably going to win the NL MVP, and I'll go ahead with the AL. I picked my AL Rookie of the Year. I actually went with Torkelson. The main reason is because I think he's the safest of the three big name AL players, the Bobby Witt and the Julio Rodriguez and the Spencer Torkelson tier. I think Torkelson was the safest of them. I feel pretty sure he's gonna hit, and at the very beginning, whereas the other guys have a little bit more range in how they start off in the big leagues. My AL Cy Young, I went ahead and just went with Garrett Cole. I did, as I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody like Dylan Cease had a huge year in one. My other guys, I was thinking maybe like a lot of people are going to pick Shane Bieber. I didn't love him after the sticky stuff ban. I know he got hurt really quickly after that, but in the couple starts he had after that, his spin rates were way down. And I think that I don't know. I mean, Garrett Cole's a great pitcher on a great team, so I would. It's gonna be hard to pick against them. And then the AL MVP, I went with Guerrero Jr. I probably should have gone with Trout but I'm gonna hold off on that until Trout plays another healthy season. I honestly thought about going with the guy that you're gonna go with. I won't spoil it, but I think he's kind of a similar situation to Trout. And I probably could have picked Otani too, but I feel like Otani's going to be really really good, but I don't think he's going to have quite the same offensive season as he did last year. I think he just had a monster offensive season last year. I think Guerrero Jr. is just going to keep getting better offensively, which is kind of hard to do as good as he was. But the only thing I worry about there is that he's a first base only and maybe even a DH part of the time. So, but those are my picks for the awards.
Yeah, so my AL Rookie of the Year, I went with Bobby Witt Jr. The way he's been hitting the cover off the ball this year, especially in spring training, it's been phenomenal. I really like him as a prospect overall. I guess a lot of people do since he's number one on baseball MLB pipeline, but I just think that he's a guy who we've heard about for a long time. I think he's going to have the breakout year. Like if you look in the minors last year, if he can cut down on the strikeouts a little bit more and keep those same walk percentage, like he hit 285, 352, 581 in AAA last year in 62 games, 285 plate appearances. Like that's a really good pace. And if he's able to bring that, over to the majors, like I think he'll run away with it. My MVP, or sorry, my Cy Young, I actually went with Jose Barrios. I really believe in what the Blue Jays are able to do with pitching, and if you look at him from when he went over there last year, his FIP was a 3.28. It was really, the ERA didn't back it up with a 3.58, but I think he's really good, and that there's always been the talk that Barrios could be a Cy Young if he can get to that next gear, if he's able to unlock that other little potential that he has. And we've saw Toronto be able to do that. They did last year with Robbie Ray, and I think the half season he showed improvement there. A full off season, even though we had the lockout, and then going through this full season with him, like I think Barrios is just going to take a step forward. That he's part of the reason why I picked them to win the division. Like I really think Barrios is going to elevate himself to an ace this year. So I have him as a Cy Young, and then MVP I went with Byron Buxton. We've talked about him a lot. He probably is one of the most talented players in all of baseball, if not the most talented player in baseball. Like you could make the argument when healthy, he could be maybe more talented overall with raw talent over Mike Trout. Mike Trout is more polished and he is great everywhere. I'm not saying that Buxton is a better player by any means, but I just think that he has more raw like talent overall than anyone in baseball. And if he can stay healthy, you're looking at a guy who could potentially be a 40-40 guy. Like he could hit 40 home runs, steal 40 bases, and hit upwards of, 30, 40 doubles even. Like that's how good Byron Buxton can be. Now the approach is, the questions are there. Like he still strikes out a lot. He doesn't walk that much. But when you're doing the type of damage that he does, you don't really need him to. Like last year, he only walked 5% of the time, 25% or 24% strikeout rate, but he hit 306 with 358, 647 slugging. He had 19 homers and 9 stolen bases in 254 at bats for a 4.2 WAR. Now that is helped a little bit by his defensive numbers, but a 169 WRC plus, like that is top level. And if he could stay healthy, then I really think Byron Buxton will be MVP this year.
Yeah, I think he's got a shot at it if he stays healthy. I do worry. I mean, I don't think that he's going to be able to repeat that kind of offensive production. But with as good a defense as he plays, if he can put up a 130 WRC plus with the defense he plays, that's an MVP caliber player. So I don't disagree with that at all. But I guess there you have it. There's our predictions. We're going to look stupid here in about 2 days. It's gonna start. We're just gonna look worse and worse. And
look,
but hey,
it can't be any worse than me literally predicting Blake Snell as Cy Young last year
and Francisco
Lindor as MVP.
Yeah.
Like I can't get any worse than that.
That was pretty bad.
Okay, so I feel like I made better predictions this year at least. So, but yeah, I know we went long on this one, but there was a lot to unpack here. By the time we'll talk to you next time, opening day will have happened. Baseball is back officially on Thursday, with most of the games kicking off on Friday. But I'm excited. I can't wait. This season is gearing up to be a really awesome one, with all the young talent coming in and all the other storylines that we have. It's going to be an exciting year, and we will make sure to break it down and bring you all of the news as it's happening here at the Bat Flip Podcast. You got anything else you want to wrap up on?
Don't think so. Just excited for the season. So.
Yep, we both are, and hope you guys follow along with us throughout the season. So that will do it for this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.